The Dem baby bust may be here. 9:05 on a frigid morning across Kansas City. Glad you're here on 95.7 FM. I should promote it as 7:10 a.m. since we've got the engineering staff working on the FM signals. So if you're not able to get us on 7:10 a.m., you can always listen to us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. The Atlantic, which is a left-wing publication, wrote this story yesterday, headlined, "The Coming Democrat Baby Bust." Says birth rates on the left fell in the last Trump presidency. That seems likely to happen again. Talking here about how Donald Trump's first term saw a great deal of political polarization, they write. Right and left-leaning Americans disagreed about environmental regulations and immigration. They disagreed about vaccines and reproductive rights, and they disagreed about whether or not to have children. As Republicans started having more babies under Trump, the birth rate among Democrats fell dramatically. Goes on to share some of the numbers. After Trump's election win through the end of 2018, 38,000 fewer babies than would otherwise be expected were conceived in Democratic counties. By contrast, 7,000 more than expected were conceived in Republican counties during that same period. Now, they're going to make this all about Trump. And the reality is this has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. They're going to make it seem like Democrats don't want to have babies because, well, the orange man is back in the White House. That's not true. As someone who is of childbearing age, I guess you would say, I guess men are always of childbearing age, so I probably shouldn't frame it like that. But as someone who is sitting here with a 6-year-old, a soon-to-be 4-year-old, and a soon-to-be 1-year-old, I can tell you for a fact that millennials are not picking and choosing kids based on, well, Trump's back in the White House, so I'm done. They literally, and I've heard this from people who are my peers, who say, I can't possibly bring a kid into this world. Oh, I can't. Oh, if I have a daughter, their rights are getting taken away left and right. I can't possibly bring children into this environment. And I heard that during the Biden years, not during the Trump years. Now, of course, I heard it during the Trump years, too. But my point is, it was not exclusive to, well, Trump's in the White House. Now, all that really is an excuse to not have children. And that's fine. Not everybody is meant to be a parent. But what this really is about is that people who are more likely to value family, value faith to some degree, value community, are more likely to lean right and want to have kids. It doesn't mean they're diehard MAGA people and walking around with their Trump 47 hats. It just means that they are far more likely to be culturally, socially, and politically in line with the Republican Party right now. The Democratic Party's appeal is largely to retired boomers from the hippie days and young people who are single, who don't have kids, who in many cases don't even have a spouse. It's why Donald Trump's continuing to clean up, and Republicans have long cleaned up, right, with married voters. Married voters are much more likely to vote Republican than those who are unmarried. And those with children are even more likely to vote Republican. If you're married with kids, you're most likely to vote Republican. And then you go down from there to married people, more likely, and then single people, less likely. That's just how it works. Because when you have kids, first off, you see the world differently. Your values change. You suddenly care about things that you just didn't care about when you were single. You didn't even care about when you were married without kids. Your worldview is different. And your worldview, especially in today's political climate, when analyzing these two parties, is far more likely to be in line with the Republican side of the aisle than it is the Democratic side of the aisle, where that party right now is overly obsessed with trying to figure out a way to make sure that people, first off, don't settle down. They really don't want them to settle down. They know the data, right? So the longer that they can keep people in a bubble where they're not getting married, where they're not having kids, the more likely they can keep it so that they're voting for them. So let's just use one example, student loan debt. Let's talk about that here for a minute. I'll hear people say, I can't have kids, I've got student loan debt. The student loan crisis is real. And it's real because the government is basically guaranteeing a lot of these loans to these colleges. There is no incentive for the college to teach kids any kind of skill set that creates a degree and gives them something to take out into the real world. They're not incentivized to do it. So they can pump out all the gender studies majors they want, and they don't care. They're getting their money. The government is oftentimes reimbursing them, is paying off these loans. And whether or not you can pay back the government is irrelevant to them. They don't care. So they create this system where they indoctrinate you in college. You get out of college. You have no skill set whatsoever. Then you're like, damn, I can't pay my loans, man. This sucks. Help me out, government. Bail out my student loans. You buy into that mentality. One political party says, yeah, we're here to help you out. We're going to bail out your student loans. If only the big bad Republicans would get out of the way. Oh, man, these guys won't bail out my loans. All right, I'll keep voting for the other guys. And then you say, I can't afford to have kids. I can't afford to buy a house. Well, where did all this start? All this started because colleges are not in a place where they are required to make sure that you are learning something that allows you to pay them back. Because in many cases, you're not paying them back. They're getting theirs. You're paying the government back. Or you're paying some loan company back. They're getting theirs. And obviously, these student loans you can never default on. They are stuck with you and they follow you for your entire life. So the college system is just one example, and I could find a bunch of them. But to me, it's the most prominent example of how the system that we've got today does not create a society that encourages people to get married, settle down, have kids. It just doesn't. And it's because of government involvement and heavy hands from government that has created this environment in large part. So when I see stories in The Atlantic headlined, hey, Democrats aren't having babies, the coming Democrat baby bust. The Democrat baby bust has been going on for years. And I'm speaking of that firsthand as someone who has, seen this over the last 10, 15 years with my peers. Most of them aren't wanting to have kids. And that's not new. Now, you are seeing a shift to the right for very young voters, but they're not all the age yet where they're settling down, getting married, and having kids. That's not happening. But it's been growing over time. Now, of course, some people think the Democratic baby bust is really just driven because Elon Musk flipped parties and he's on like kid number 27 at this point, it seems like. But that's not actually the case. The fertility rate by county, when you look at it, has always been higher in red counties in recent years than it has been in blue counties. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. But if you're going to blame Trump for this, you're totally missing the point. You're missing the cultural shift that is happening on both sides of the political aisle. You're missing what's actually happening at the ground level, at the grassroots level, and it's not just orange man bad, despite what some people are going to want to tell you.